All right, friends, I think I've got most of the devices working. Hello and good evening, everyone. My name is Reverend Laura Everett, and I serve as the Executive Director of the Massachusetts Council of Churches. We are live on Mass Council's Facebook page, and some of you may be watching this recording later. And we hope it will be edifying for you. I'm really thrilled to be joined with colleagues this evening who are here to talk about the Institute for Theology and Disability. The Institute for Theology and Disability will be holding their annual conference in Boston at Boston College, June 17 through 20 of 2024. And we are so excited that this international conference is coming to Boston, that we wanted to give a preview of it with two members of the planning team. So I will turn it over to these two colleagues to introduce themselves and say your name and where you are calling in from this evening, and maybe how you got into this work.
Greg, why don't you start? Because you were the one who contacted Laura.
Hi, I am Greg Woods, calling in from actually snowy Minneapolis, with Israel this winter. We haven't gotten a lot of snow, so a nice night. I use he, him pronouns. And I got into this work because I am disabled myself, and I met I have known people who have been involved since for almost 10 years, and after the pandemic, I finally went to my first run in 2022. At the last year's conference, I wanted to get more involved. So I do theology work around disability and Quaker worship, primarily because that is where I'm coming from.
Okay. and then Greg, you went in 22 and then last year as well, and had a hand in running it last year in 23. And Greg and I are both on the coordinating council for the Institute on Theology and Disability. I helped found it in 2010 and currently serve as an advisor to the coordinating council, as they have been moving in the last since 2019 from an administrative model of having one person really running the show with some advice to having a coordinating council running it together. It involves a lot of volunteer work, obviously, by people. The council's got about 8 people on it, but the Institute itself was begun as a way to bring people from both the academic world and the world of ministry together who were interested and involved in ministries and theology and any kind of theological discipline that includes or addresses or relates to people with disabilities and their families. So over the course of it's been started originally as a 5-day institute, and now it's 4 days a week, and it will be at Boston College. We have depended upon host seminaries or universities who invited us to come to their territory for an institute. And it basically has a series of plenary sessions, 2 each day, along with 2 rounds of workshops that are proposed by people in our wider community. The Institute now has about 3,000 people on its Facebook page who've liked it, and another 1,000 who are in a Facebook group where people can talk and discuss and share things. And it's been a delight for me to be able to meet Greg, even though we were in the same part of the country around 2010 when he was a student at Princeton Theological Seminary, but I did not know him at the time. That's where I was in Princeton because my wife taught at Princeton Seminary. But it's been,
And I took a class with her once.
so that's the basic outline of the Institute. This year, like other years, we're having the first day is called a community day because we recognize that people from congregations and other places can't afford 4 days nor the whole registration fee. So if they'd like to come for one day to kind of get a sense of the flavor of a first day of the Institute that sort of stands by itself, but is also part of the Institute, it's been a pretty popular thing for people from congregations and clergy, people with disabilities. CPE groups have come for that day as a learning day. And then there'll be 3 other days. And this year, because the Wednesday is Juneteenth, June the 19th, the focus of the program is going to be on racism and disability. And we have one of the leading authors in that area right now, Dr. Lamar Hardwick, who is he calls himself the autistic pastor, who's written a number of books on disability and theology and has a brand new one out on the connections between racism and disability and what the churches can do, how they've been wrapped up in that and what they can also do. So I can give some more. I'll let you ask questions now, Laura, because you know the Council of Churches network and audience better than we do.
Well, thank you both. That's a lot of great information. I think as local church pastors and interfaith leaders are thinking about this upcoming conference, help us imagine why it could be meaningful for someone to attend on the community day. What would that experience be like?
We will have 2 speakers from the local Boston area from institutes bioeducation. Andrew Davis, a professor at Boston College, and are they both from Boston College, Bill?
Well, I think we were taught, Dr. Davis we're doing an
Oh,
introductory
yeah.
dinner that night. One of the keynoters in the morning is going to be, the focus session is going to be by Leon Van Olmen, who has just written a book on autism and worship. He's from their institute that focuses on autism and worship at the university in Aberdeen, Scotland. Has a new book out on that. And I just heard him speak this last week at Baylor. He was here at Baylor. He was at Baylor, not far from where I am. And the book and his presentation was excellent. They've been doing a lot of listening to people on the autism spectrum and reflecting on the implications of that for Christian worship, given their experiences. And there'll be another speaker, and I'm blocking on which one is it, and then Dr. Davis in the evening from Boston.
Karen Hobby.
Oh, Karen Harvey is right. She'll be the first speaker. She is from Baltimore and is an expert on trauma and in working with people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and as a therapist for many years. And she's an excellent presenter. We often don't think about the way trauma impacts the lives of people with disabilities, but she is just really excellent. in that. So she and Leon Van Omen will be during the day, and Dr. Davis as an added bonus at night. We usually have an opening dinner that people can stay for if they wish. And then there'll be a panel of some other people in the area that we know of that are doing interesting work. One of the things about the Institute that's always been interesting is that it helps bring people together in our host area that didn't know each other anyway. And, and then helps to build some connections that way.
Yeah, and the panel will be moderated by Stephanie Edwards of the Boston Theological Initiative Consortium. And the panel will have 2 PhD students who are disabled and 3 people who work in Congo and out in the community. One a college chaplain, one who is a UCC minister, and a Jewish rabbi. We are still working on the schedule. So that way I got kind of confused about who was in the morning. Karen Harvey, just as a note, is comes do this work from the Buddhist tradition. So that it's still we are still making strides to make it more debate conference. And a on Tuesday night, we will have Julia Watts Bozo talking about her new book. So that is another exciting thing. And right now we are still working on the costs and registration, but since we have since we know people are really interested in like Julia Watts Bozo or maybe coming on Wednesday for that day, we are trying to think of special one day or one event rising too, because a lot of people might have Wednesday off since it is a federal holiday now, and then people may be free in the evening, like on that Tuesday. We had hoped to have registration open on Friday, but we are waiting on to hear back from Boston College about some variables, so we can open we hope we can open it up by middle of March. So.
As anybody knows who's planning a conference or an event, things happen that you didn't plan for as you're planning it. And it turns out there's construction at Boston College, which is impacting which particular rooms and dorm rooms we're going to be in. But usually we've tried to have the registration open at least by April 1st. Our goal was to try to make it earlier this year, but we're not going to quite make that. So we hope, but it will be fairly soon. The community day cost, by the way, is $50. So we think is reasonable for people who want to come in for a day. The conference as a whole is more expensive, but we're trying to make it possible. We feel like a sense of wanting to connect with local people in the region, not just to come in and have a conference in Boston and then leave, but to connect with people in the area who we know are interested in ministries with and by people with disabilities.
Yeah, and I want to go back to something that I heard you say, Greg, about that the community days often allow for connection of people who are doing disability ministry, who may not know one another. Because one of the things that we found with Mass Council of Churches is that people are living with disability, ministering with disability, making adaptations, finding new ways to worship, to pray, to gather. And sometimes just the connections, we try to make the connections through Mass Council of Churches, but sometimes people don't know that, oh, there's a sensory attentive worship service happening in Concord and one that's happening in Worcester, but folks don't know one another. And in my experience, one of the things that unfortunately happens is either denominational lines or um, lack of communication can mean and patterns of gathering mean that sometimes disability can isolate.
Oh, yes. And
And I'm wondering if you can speak to that and maybe to the ways that this conference has broken down the lines in between different disabilities.
yeah, I think as someone who used to work in a church I in Boston, I used to work in Cambridge. Um it's also really hard to make connections just because especially for Christians, we are all and like for Christian ministers, we are all working on Sunday morning, pretty much. So we can't always go visit each other churches and each other contexts. And I think also that not do and also that church work is a all encompassing job. So I think so um so I think allowing time for people to come outside of a Sunday and do I usually Mondays pastor's day off a slower day for many not always but we are hoping that we can get people in contact and get people to share fellowship and to share ideas and connections. I know for myself, I've developed a robust network of disabled ministers across the country that are that we meet twice a month and not everyone go to ITD and the group started independently of ITD, but that is how I got really plugged in with the institute. And we have added a lot more people because of the institute. Um, so I think just being in community and sharing our concerns and what is working, what isn't, a space where we can be our disabled selves. Lastly, I know a lot of churches who are working on racism or homelessness. Um, and not too many churches are talking about disability, which is a shame because I feel disability, um, when you look at different other problems like other issues like homelessness or racism, disability is one of the factors that can go in uh, to uh, uh, like economic, environmental injustice that affects uh, um, Black community, people of color, and that has like increased. There is people of color are more apt to have disabilities because who does so environmental stuff because we are the industrial plants located cancer and um uh other problem other issues and also that homelessness. A lot of people who are homeless have some sort of uh, disability oftentimes. Not always, but mental health is involved or other disabilities are involved. Like if you get in a car accident or in a hospital for a long time and you don't have a safety net, you could easily lose your job and your housing really fast. So it is all interconnected. And we chose it on talking about it. One of my last point, American with Disability Acts explicitly included congregations from um, following ADA. So many of our worship spaces are inaccessible to disabled people. And how do we become a welcoming community if people can't get into the building or get into the pulpit to minister?
Yeah, I think one of the, you said something, Laura, about people feeling isolated. And I think one of the things we found at the Institute that when people have come is that one of the things they've appreciated is they don't have to, they feel totally at home because everybody's speaking the same language or interested in the same kinds of things. So and there have been a lot of networking and relationships that you have emerged out of the Institute that have led to people collaborating in different ways and keeping in touch with one another. I mean, the last couple of decades has seen an explosion of resources in this area, but I still think a lot of people who are working in it at different points don't feel like they have a lot of, they kind of feel like they're working hard by themselves without a lot of support sometimes.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate the holistic way that you all are attending to the multiple facets of disability and theology, right? Like it's not just about physical accessibility. It's not just about changing theology. And I hope what folks are hearing in this invitation to attend both in person, right, and online, some of what I've been really impressed with and has been a learning experience for me is thinking about what full inclusion and full accessibility looks like. And even as we thought about hosting a conversation, asking, how do we do this better? Well, having text at the bottom of the screen, being mindful about the speed by which I speak, having the captioning on, that you all are offering for the conference online participation options. And so as we make this invitation to folks in Massachusetts, who maybe haven't attended before, that there is a online participation option as well, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Great.
That grew out of COVID because, and after we came back together the first time, and when Greg was there the first time, and you were there, Greg, for more of that conference than I was. I could only be there shortly, but so many people still couldn't travel because of COVID related stuff that's where the first time where we tried to get it all online.
And as someone who attended in person, I had to get back to work. I get home. So I actually watched the last day back in Minnesota online. So it provides people the option of um because there is not just for disabled people, but people who can't pick up their lives for a week, especially parents or caregivers of some kind, or even people who are low on vacation days, a much cheaper option, and it is a reduced cost, but we are still working on how can we help lower that cost to make it fully more accessible to more people. But as a small organization, we do need to cover costs. So it's really balancing act, but I do want to point out BTI will help cover costs of seminary students and their collective who want to go. So who want to attend in person or I imagine online too. Um so because I can imagine some of the institutions would have at distant online students involved. So
The other thing we try to do for people who want to attend, and if they have an attendant because of a disability, they come for free. The attendant a personal care assistant would have to pay for a meal, but otherwise the registration is free. The coming is free. So we try to practice what we preach.
Well, we deeply admire that. So what I'm going to do is drop the link for the Boston Theological Interreligious Consortium, which is, as Greg said, making accessible Boston Theological Interreligious Consortium, who is one of the co-sponsors of the conference. We'll put that link in the Facebook Live chat, and it's bostontheological.org, so that if there are folks who are following along with the Facebook Live or watching this later, you can follow up with our colleagues at bostontheological.org. We're coming up on about half an hour, and I want to be mindful of the time that we committed. Again, as you all are inviting people in New England to come join with this conference on theology and disability that's coming in person and online to Boston College, June 17 through 20. Any closing thoughts? And Bill, I'll start with you and then come back to you, Greg, at the end.
Well, I think it's maybe appropriate. One of the things that I think you can see the evolution over the 14 years since we began, is that there are more and more people with disabilities taking leadership roles in the Institute and writing and speaking around the church. And so I think you see a gradual evolution which is really good, of listening first, trying to listen to and with people with disabilities and their families, as well as others who work in the field. So that's been a good thing.
Thank you, Bill.
Yeah, thank you again for hosting, and I look forward to being back in Boston in June, and just hope people come out, and people it is a great conference. I enjoy seeing it. Feels like family now. So some of the people I see there, I only get to see once a year. Like Bill. So I look forward to the time. It is a unique conference. It is academic, but not. So they will be paper presentations, but they will be workshops that are not academic, that are by lay people talking about what they are doing in their churches, new ways of thinking about um, uh, of doing disability ministry and theology. So it is hopefully a incubator for people to get ideas and share ideas to help make the church and religious communities more in general, more accessible and more inclusive, and aiming for not just inclusion but belonging too.
Well, I think that's a really good word to end with. Not just inclusion, but belonging. Let that be our North Star. So, dear friends, folks who are listening, you've heard the call, you've heard the invitation, not just inclusion, but belonging. Thank you to Bill and Greg, all who are listening and joining us this evening. Whenever you're watching, we hope you consider attending the Institute for Theology and Disability conference that is coming to Boston College, June 17 through 20. You are most welcome. You are invited, and in fact, you belong. Good night, and we look forward to seeing you there.
Thank you, Laura.
Peace.